Hello and welcome back to the Strategic Health Check, the prescription that I give to your charity and that it really needs to survive in tough charity sector, a tough but loving charity sector. Today, I'm so excited. We have a guest from Epilepsy Action, Chantal Spittles. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. It's so good to have you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us. Today, as release date, as it's being released, is Purple Day. So we'll find out all about that. First of all, I wanted, kind of in our discussion, Chantal, I wanted to really kind of find out. I will actually, before I ask you some questions, I did want to tell our listeners that I actually have epilepsy, and I had it. It was like I was saying to Chantal a couple of weeks back, like it came out of the blue. There were no risk factors. It was literally I had slept 12 hours that night. I don't usually get that much sleep. I just slept so well. I hadn't even had my coffee and I have an epileptic fit. And then because it was my second one after about 10 years, then I get diagnosed because it's the second, that's how it works with epilepsy, for those of you who don't know. And I'm very fortunate that the medication that I take, obviously I'm not here to promote medications or pharmaceuticals, but there is a medication that I take. I won't name it, just for obviously health and safety, all of that. But there's a very effective medication that I take for it. So I consider myself one of the lucky ones. However, I'll tell you more about my experience because we will get to that. But I just wanted to start off saying that I have epilepsy, and that's what attracted me to reach out to Chantal at Epilepsy Action, and she very graciously accepted my invitation. So welcome, Chantal. The floor is yours. I was reading all about your latest survey and how it tells us about people living with epilepsy today. So what do you think that it tells us about people, both from the general public and the community? What would you say?
Hi, Jose. Well, thank you first for having us on your podcast, and just thank you for being open about your epilepsy. It's really important that we have days like Purple Day where we can be open about the condition and talk about it honestly, how it affects people, and ultimately what we want is people to understand, how it affects others so that they can help. Because we know that there is still a lot of misunderstanding and many misconceptions around epilepsy. So we did some survey research work for Purple Day, and it was quite shocking, quite upsetting what we found. There is still a lot of sort of misunderstanding and lack of knowledge just about how much epilepsy affects people. So the research found that around 8 in 10 people actually underestimate just how many people epilepsy affects. 53% of them thought only 30 people are diagnosed every day, so they think it's pretty rare. But the reality is it's actually 79 people who are diagnosed with the condition every day, and that affects 630,000 people in the UK. So it's far from rare. It's one of the most common neurological conditions. So there's that knowledge piece. Did you know that it affected that many people? Maybe before your diagnosis, you might not have been aware. I don't know.
To be completely honest with you, Chantal, and with our listeners, like I'm the kind of person, like I don't like to, it's bad. I don't like to do too much research on the conditions that I have because I also have lupus. So I like to bury my head in the sand like an ostrich a little bit. So about other conditions that I don't have, our listeners know that I work closely with Cancer Research UK as a campaigns ambassador and as a volunteer. So that I'm more comfortable, even though I have family members with cancer. I'm more comfortable looking at the statistics there. But for statistics about my own, I get a bit kind of scared. So thank you for sharing with you. I had no idea, to be honest with you,
Yeah,
that it was that
it's
much.
it's it's really interesting, and
79. Just in the
yeah,
UK, sorry. Just in the
79
UK.
people diagnosed every day in the UK. And in some ways, not everyone might know that because, like you said, there are lots of different health conditions out there that you might not know just how many affected every day. But the fact that it is one of the most common neurological conditions, we also found in the research that not everyone understood the actual impact that it has on people. So, for example, 16% of people didn't, only 16% of people acknowledge that it can affect anyone at any stage in their life. So there is still quite a lot of people that just think, it might be something more that you're born with or that you have as a child, or if your family has it, you might have it. But so, there's that kind of understanding that it has a huge impact. It can affect anyone, anytime, anywhere. That's essentially what we want to get over this Purple Day. It doesn't really, you know what I mean? And like you said, in your experience, it can happen out of the blue. There can be no obvious reason as to what's caused it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying all of that. This is a follow-up question, and kind of weaving in my experience is that there's no incidence of it in my family.
Yeah.
So I didn't inherit it. And I had my first seizure when I was think about it was 2017, so a few years back. Don't want to say my age on air. No, I was I'm 32 now. I can share that.
No,
But
it's a long time ago, though, isn't it? That's a long time, though.
yes,
20
2017
years.
till now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Nearly 9 years it's been because it was kind of later on. But so it's like but at that time, and here I am like getting angry about it. But I mean, it makes people a bit kind of upset, and so I want to kind of share that with our listeners is that whatever your charity is, whatever your cause is, it's gonna affect the people. And and I'm one of them. And there was a cause for that. I was on taking some other medication that
Okay.
caused that. But the second time, there were no risk factors in place. Like I was no longer on that medication. I slept 12 hours, which significantly reduces the risk of having a
Yeah.
seizure.
Yeah.
There was no other risk factors. But anyway, thank you for sharing the misconceptions and all of that. Um, Tell me, Chantal, how does exactly and specifically does Epilepsy Action support patients and their families, and how long has it been doing that for?
So the charity's been going for over 75 years. So there's been an incredible amount of it's changed a lot in that time. And I've worked for the charity for 10 years, so I've seen it grow even a lot, even in that relatively short time. If you think 10 to 75, there's a big gap. But I've worked here for 10 years, and in that time, I've seen it change hugely. We had a big rebrand a couple of years ago. We had a major, one of our biggest awareness campaigns last year to raise awareness about epilepsy called Could I Count on You? And that was just incredible, getting to over 10 million people, because awareness, as we
Oh,
know, is just so important. It's the bedrock of everything. We have to have people to be aware if they have epilepsy, or other people and members of the public, they need to be aware as well. So awareness is a huge part of what we do. Uh, Talking
lovely.
about epilepsy, getting people to share their stories so they feel more empowered and more comfortable talking about their condition, and educating others, obviously, as well. Um, but we
Oh,
know that not everyone can do that, because whatever stage of their journey they're at, it can be really hard if they're just coming to terms with a brand new diagnosis, or their life's just been hugely turned upside down. So we're very much there to support people. We have support groups, helpline information, campaigning.
okay.
It's very much about advocating for people with epilepsy, holding their hand, knowing that they're there along, basically all along the way. And then
Oh,
obviously we have amazing fundraisers as well, because we couldn't deliver those support services that I've just mentioned without our fabulous fundraisers. And they're people often who are affected by the condition and just want to give something back and say, thank you for helping me. I'm going to do something and give something back so you can be there for other people. So there's so much that we do, but that's just some of it. It's just basically creating that network, that community that people with epilepsy know that they're part of, and their loved ones as well, because as you know, it affects everyone around you. Like everyone has
Yes.
to change and adapt and come to terms with something. So
Yes.
yeah, it's really important that we all work together to achieve that.
Well, I am sold, Chantal. Like you have summed that up not just beautifully, but you now I want to give back. As our listeners know, I do strategic fundraising alongside this podcast, and I work with charities in the sector. So I would love we can discuss this after Chantal rather than on the episode, but I would love to get involved in some of the campaigns because I've been fundraising since 2019.
Okay.
So not so I have some experience, and I've fundraising. I used to do door to door, which which isn't easy. Did you is that one of your methods, so to speak, the door to door, or what kind of fundraising do you do?
No, a large part of our fundraising is mainly through community, so people holding special events in their community,
Okay.
challenges. We have a lot of people do Facebook fundraisers. That seems to be
Oh,
something I think that came in probably after COVID, but
did.
we're still doing
Yeah.
that. People still love doing that because it gives them a purpose for a month to say, I'm going to walk 50 miles in February, and I'm going to raise
Oh,
awareness while I'm doing it. So that seems to be still very popular. And then obviously we have the
wow.
big challenges like the London Marathon, certain marathons in different cities. People love getting involved in those. We've recently branched out into more corporate fundraising. So we've established some really good partnerships with Chelsea FC was probably one of the biggest highlights this year. So they did some epilepsy awareness training with their staff. So the idea is that if you're in the stadium, 1 in 100 people has epilepsy. So
Oh, is that
many
the
people.
statistic? One in a
Yeah,
hundred.
so 1 in 100.
Okay.
So if you think of a
Okay.
football stadium that hosts
Yeah.
thousands,
Thousands.
immediately you've instantly got people with epilepsy. So it was really special to do that training with Chelsea, and it'd be great to
Oh,
roll that out to other clubs as well, because I guess it's that point that epilepsy doesn't affect you just in your home. It's about all the different public spaces that you think about, like whether it's
absolutely. Yes.
supermarkets, football stadiums, train stations. It doesn't kind of
Yes.
choose where it happens. So we have to raise
Yeah.
awareness in those spaces as well. So that's a big part of what we're doing to get into those networks, whether it's corporates or whether it's just actual just spaces, just members of the public thinking about where they go and getting there to talk to them.
That's amazing. I mean, definitely that analogy and of the football stadium is something that's interesting from my personal experience, and you mentioned different public spaces, but for example, when I go to the gym, like when I signed up, I had to disclose the condition, and so it then it puts me I there's no shame about it. There's nothing to be ashamed about. But then I maybe mistakenly felt like a burden because it then goes on the system. And as far as I'm aware, when I sign in with my um fob or whatever it's called,
Mhm.
it shows up on their screen that I have epilepsy. So it's not a shame, but then they have to check on me when I go in the pool, and it's just a bit of a it is what it is. But I mean, it's their protocol, and I think they should do it. But maybe I feel it's something that I should own more. But I do you think that resonates with a lot of people that
I think
um
definitely. I think it depends. There are some places that obviously will ask about your condition and they use that in a good way. So that it's just because they're looking out for you and they put systems in place. So, we
yeah,
do hear from people who they have gone to like a gym or wherever or on the train, and staff know what to do and they feel looked after, they feel safe. But then sometimes that information, it depends on it. sometimes people do go to those spaces and they feel like they're being discriminated against or they're being judged, and that's not good. So there's a nuance. I think there's one thing to be
There is a
asked when
nuance.
it
Yeah.
you feel like I just want to get on with my workout. I don't want to be bothering anyone, but I think it's
Yeah.
just knowing that people are looking out for you in a good way. Uh, and we know that that does happen. Equally, we know that sometimes it does happen where, people have felt like they're being judged or excluded from things, and that's really what we want to challenge and fight against, because ultimately in our strategy it's about a world without limits. So
Okay.
obviously epilepsy will put limits on your life in terms of seizures. If they happen, you have to take time out, you have to stop and just say, you know do what you have to do. But ultimately we need to have the world so that it doesn't put those limits on people, so that they can uh, travel, they can go to the gym, they can go shopping, and just think, if I have a seizure, someone is going to know what to do.
Oh,
Obviously, it's going to take time for us to do that, but that's ultimately what we need to do. The world needs to change. It's not people with epilepsy. The world needs to change so that people with epilepsy can just feel able to get on with their lives, and that, because ultimately they can't control their condition. Medication does that to some extent, but you can't control when you have a seizure, where or when. But what we can control is how we react to it and how we help. So that's about why we want to educate the public to feel able to know what to do.
yeah, that puts things into perspective for me as a patient, and it will resonate with a lot of people who have it. Which leads me on actually to a question. Um, in my case, I'm very fortunate. I count my blessings that I don't have seizures. I'm on this medication and take it morning and night, and I'm
Yeah.
controlled. So, touch wood, touch
Yeah,
wood.
that's really
But
good.
from your experience and obviously a decade with the charity and obviously being much more aware than I certainly am, what would you say is kind of the percentage or the frequency of people who are on medication but still have seizures? Is it common? Because that's something that might inform me as well as a patient.
Yeah, so I think around 4 in 10 people with epilepsy have controlled seizures, but we estimate that it could be around 7 in 10 if there were better options available. Some people, their seizures just never will be controlled, and that's just at this stage. It's just a sad reality that uh, they will not be able to get that seizure control. But we think that that actually could be a lot better than it is. Um, it's very rare that new medications come onto the market. There are some new medications, but it's often for certain types of epilepsy, or probably
Yeah.
more for children. So we definitely need to see more treatment options. Compared to certain other health conditions, it just doesn't feel that there are limited options, and then often you have to take a certain. It's great to hear that you've managed to find a balance that works for you, and a lot of people do manage that, but then it's for some others, they try so many different combinations and they just can't get that. uh Whether it's like they might just have a seizure once a month, but it's still there, it's still very much lurking. And some people have seizures every day, so it's such a broad spectrum of how many people it affects. And yeah, we essentially need more medications, more advancements in technology, but epilepsy is just so underfunded as well. If you look at the UK, say compared to France or Germany, we have a quarter of the workforce in terms of neurology compared to those countries. Um, and yeah, it's just,
Oh, quarter.
yeah,
Wow.
compared to France or Germany, like it's just the
Wow.
workforce is just it. I don't know why neurology is often feels so overlooked, because um,
So
if you consider
important.
we all have brains, it's
Yes. And
you think it would
dementia.
be, yeah,
Yeah.
when
And
you
it
look at
involves
other
dementia.
neurological
Yeah.
conditions, why is it that epilepsy and other neurological conditions feel so overlooked at times?
I,
It's
yeah.
staggering.
It really is. It really is. they, yeah, I mean, I can't agree enough on that. It feels, I mean, certainly, yeah, certainly overlooked is the word, is
Yeah.
the exact word. Which brings me on to really kind of what the purpose as we're launching today, the 26th of March and Purple Day. So can you tell me all about this, Chantal? Like how long has it been going on for? Why is it purple? Anything, because you sum up everything beautifully. You have a way with words. So tell our listeners, if you can, what Purple Day, what's it all about? Because I'm curious. And I didn't research
Exactly.
on purpose because I wanted to hear from you.
Now, I will tell you, what I love about Purple Day is it shows what can happen when someone just has a really good idea and then they just try it out and then everyone gets involved. It just shows you what can happen when we all work together. So, Purple Day began in 2008 by a girl called Cassie Megan in Canada, when she was much younger. I think she's in her early 20s now. So, um, 2008, she has epilepsy and she just wanted to raise awareness at her school about Purple Day. Purple's often associated with epilepsy. I think it's
Oh,
uh, associated with lavender as well. I think in terms of relaxation and epilepsy,
yes,
there's some
yes.
connotations and connections there. So she just said, "I'm starting Purple Day. I want everyone to dress up in purple." That was just a sort of a grassroots, low key way of raising awareness for her in Canada. But then since 2008, it's grown and it's become like a movement across the world that countries, so lots of people in the UK celebrate it, but people all over the world kind of come together. It's a day of recognition, I think, for people with epilepsy. It's a day for them to say, I have the condition, we stand together. But also it's a day for them to educate other members of the public as well and just use it as a day. I guess it's not just Purple Day, is it? It's every day of the year, but it's a really nice way of all coming together. And it just shows that just one person having that idea, what it can spark off. And here we are, 2026, many, many years later, and we're still talking about it and we're still having conversations. So yeah, it was really good. And we work with Cassidy sometimes as well, and she's great and she's still talking about epilepsy. So yeah, she's a great ambassador for the condition.
Amazing, amazing. So what can I do? Obviously, what can I do today, the 26th of March? What can I do today to well, obviously every day, as you said, is a good opportunity to raise awareness, but what can what can I do? What can our listeners do today, the 26th of March, to celebrate it and to honor it?
Oh, that's lovely. Well, the fact that you've got us on your podcast is obviously very kind, and that's just you're doing your bit to spread the word. It's very much, I think, a lot of what we do in our charity is getting into different spaces because it's not just about being in one space. Everyone with epilepsy is they're operating in so many different areas. So it's about making sure we go to where those communities are. And there's every chance that your listeners, you probably either have someone close to you, you might have epilepsy, they might have someone in their family, or they might just know someone. So if that's the case, and you think there's more I could know, um, this is a really good day to find out. So just, for example, first aid can be something really practical because there are obviously loads of different seizure types and it can feel quite complicated, but essentially first aid is just super
Yes.
simple. We have a really nice acronym, or like a little way of saying it, but care, all you need to do is care. Uh, and that is essentially like care stands for just cushion someone's head. If you see them on the floor and
Okay.
their head's like on the pavement and it's just cushion their head so that they don't damage themselves any further. Assess the situation, just make sure that nothing else is in their way that could cause them any danger. Just reassure them because often when they come round, they can feel disorientated, frightened, really like they're not sure what's going on. I'm sure I don't know if that resonates with you, but just that feeling of trying
Yes,
to work out
yes,
where you are,
yes,
it can
yes,
be
yes.
terrifying. So reassure them, and then if the seizure's gone on for longer than 5 minutes, then just call the emergency services. So it's it sounds a lot, but ultimately it's really simple, and just the act of staying with them, making sure they're safe, and just being there for them. That we know that that makes a huge difference because I've spoken to lots of people who said, this stranger stepped in to help me. I was this one of these stories always stays with me about a guy who'd gone for a run in his like local city, and then the next thing he knew, he'd woken up. He was covered in blood. He was terrified, but someone had put their jacket under his head, and he said it was a red jacket, I think. And he said, "I'd never know who that person was. I'll probably never see them again." But just that act of knowing that someone had put their jacket and just left him, well, stayed with him, but I think there were other people around him when he came round. But ultimately, knowing that someone had stepped in, given them the jacket, made sure he was okay. He said that will just stay with him, and that gives him the confidence now. So when he goes out on other runs, it's a bit like he thinks, well, I might have a seizure, but ultimately, I know that people are good, and I know that people will help. Um, so obviously that doesn't happen every time, but that has given him confidence to keep going because he's like, someone help me, and people will help me
Oh,
again. So yeah, that story really stayed with me. Just that who owned that red jacket, like we'll never know, but it made all the difference that day.
you're gonna make me emotional, Chantal, because this,
I'm
oh
sorry.
my,
It's
no, I love it. No, it's so important. I and this is me being completely honest with our listeners as well. Like I didn't know what to expect with this podcast interview, but I certainly didn't expect to get a little bit emotional, and but that's you, Chantal. That's you in a good and in the positive sense. Like you're really passionate about it. You know your facts, and you
yeah.
know how to tell a story, and that what was actually going to be my question. Is there a story? And that leads me on actually to something important. You alluded to your fundraisers before. So do they raise? And it sounds like a silly question, but do they raise money? Is that the purpose of it? Okay.
Yes, so they raise money for us, and then that money will help to go towards services such as our frontline services, so the helpline. We have just recently launched a chatbot on the website, so sometimes people don't want to pick up the phone. They
Uh-huh.
want to just ask a question in confidence, and then if they want to talk to someone, they can do. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
something we've recently launched to expand that helpline. Uh, Support
Fantastic.
groups, one-to-one peer support, we have that service as well.
Love
So
it.
yeah, so that fundraising, we wouldn't be able to offer the frontline services that we do
Yeah.
without people's fundraising. And obviously the awareness campaigning and work um, that we do on social, telling stories in the
Yeah.
media, that all
Podcasts.
podcasts, etc. That's something we want to do more of, just getting onto more
Yes.
podcasts because each podcast has its own really nice group of listeners because it's just a special interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to do definitely more of that and getting into different communities as well. So we're trying to get to, so we're based in Leeds, which is very near Bradford, which has a very ethnically diverse community, but we know that we're not getting to people because uh, they they view epilepsy differently potentially, or they just don't know how to ask for help. So we want to do some more work this year about how we get into those sort of more, you know, big communities, but people that just we aren't reaching for whatever reason. So it's about that's how we grow and that's how we diversify. Fundraising is really important, but we can't do any of it without awareness as well. So the two go,
Hand
hand
in
in hand, which I'm
hand.
sure you know through your work as well. That people have to
Yes.
know why they're fundraising. They have to have a passion
Yes.
and a cause. So that's
Yes.
why those stories are so important.
100%. The
Yeah.
stories are crucial with fundraising, and I think if we don't, I was actually reading this really good good book about fundraising. I always like to challenge myself and to read as much as I can because I have that experience, but I always like to challenge myself. But actually, one thing that stood out for me from the chapter that I read, I like to read a chapter a day. A day, it's like a good habit. And it's like a problem. It's a problem to not have a problem in your fundraising, and that sounds harsh, but it's just the nature of the game. You need to be able to articulate the problem as you have done beautifully. With the mentioning the statistics and all of that. That's exactly what we need with fundraising. So it sounds like it's going well. Do you have, for example, any kind of direct debits system, or is that not used with the epilepsy action?
So we do have people who have direct debit set up, regular givers with us. We also used to have a membership model where people paid about £20 a year and they would get a magazine and a
Okay,
few other benefits. But what we've done this year, we've done something a bit more radical. So we've done away with that kind of membership model, and now it's free at the point of entry, so that people uh, can sign up for the community to be part of the Epilepsy Action community for free. They'll still get the magazine, they'll still get other benefits, but it's more about having more people being able to join. So it's not just a select group of people, but widening that pool of people. And then when
amazing.
they're able to give back, they can if they want to, but it's not about that necessarily at the first thing. The first thing is to get them that support that they need. And then, like I said, once they've done something, they might feel, right, I want to take on some sort of challenge or do something to give back. So yeah, it's really exciting that we've widened that community out this year, and we look forward to seeing how
Yeah.
that goes.
Well, it does really seem that there have been changes in the past year, and certainly, as you were saying before, in the past few years since the pandemic. Um, but kind of, looking ahead 2 to 3 years from now, um, roughly, what are the biggest strategic challenges or opportunities that you see for epilepsy action and improving life for people with epilepsy? What do you think maybe some challenges that need to be overcome or opportunities that can be seized if done correctly?
Yeah, I think like you say, it's there are issues and problems, but that means that there are some opportunities just by that nature. A problem, there is a solution, hopefully. So obviously income is challenging because we're living in
Yeah.
very unstable and unpredictable times. Just in the last few weeks alone, there's things that are happening in in the wider world that you just think, what is this impact going to be to the average person in the street looking at their finances and thinking, how much can I give to that charity? So there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of income. Um, but we are trying to diversify. So I think, as I mentioned before, trying to get into new communities, so growing, so getting into the Chelsea FC community, talking on podcasts like this one, trying to get to those hidden communities um, that might not, you know, we seldom hear from, but we need to
Hmm.
hear about more from. I think the more that and therefore I think awareness is our biggest challenge and our biggest opportunity. So if we can do more to get awareness and get people in who might not know about epilepsy. But so, for example, one thing we're doing is we've grown our community of bloggers. So people with
Oh,
epilepsy who are like really good at making content. They speak about epilepsy in a very authentic way. It's not about, say, the charity coming out with the charity way of talking. It's
branding.
about, yeah, it's
Yeah,
about someone who's just authentic and knows how to talk to people, but they have their own networks as well. So we're very much growing that and just getting to different audiences. And I think that's that's what we really need to do because we need to be seen in as many places as possible. So I think our helpline team as well are going more into social communities now. Um,
amazing.
so Reddit, for example, people are,
Yeah.
there are people having conversations about epilepsy on platforms such as Reddit. So it's about getting into those places and talking about epilepsy and saying, look, there is help out there if you need it. And then obviously the more people we bring in, that creates a whole energy and synergy that we can use for other campaign work, or and that can
Wow.
spark onto fundraising as well. I think the biggest challenge for us as well is just getting high profile people to speak up about the condition. Um, I've been in the charity sector for 13 years, and I used to work for a bone cancer charity. Um, and back then, that was a very emotive condition that had a devastating impact on people. But I think because it was a very visible condition, um, for somehow it was just get easier to get people to speak up about the impact that it had on their life. Whereas with epilepsy, it comes with it's visible, but it's also hidden. Um, and it's people
100%.
don't want to speak up because they think it might affect their work prospects or the way they're seen in their
Driving.
community, driving. Um, so
Yes.
it still
100%.
stays hidden for some of those reasons that we've just mentioned. Um, so
Yes.
I think for me, that's a huge challenge. Like, how can we get, when you look at, say, cancer charities, they have such, there's still challenges for those, but there's people with the profile that can spread that awareness. You just look at the power of a celebrity or a well-known person talking about a condition. It just changes things overnight. So if we, like Rob Burrows, MND, it's it just elevated it overnight, but we don't seem to be able to find that for epilepsy. And I think it's because it's still hidden in many ways. People just feel I've got to keep this quiet. And I understand why, because if you think you're going to be judged in some way, or you just want to try and minimize it, it's easy to just keep it quiet. But yeah, it's difficult. It's a really challenging condition. It's been very interesting to work, and there's still so much that I'm learning, even, so it's very much about education and just asking questions.
Well, it's something that you seem very passionate about, and I can see that you're so experienced in the charity sector, which is great to hear. And I actually picked up on one thing in particular, but all of it was interesting, but one thing in particular was the financial challenges. And I wanted to direct our listeners, if they missed out on episode 2, that was I always like to use my puns. So the title of the episode is Retention and Tension. And as far as I remember, because I do a lot of talking, as far as I remember back, this was our series premiere on the 1st of January. It was episode 2. And I believe that the percentage of people giving to charity, it reduced from 54% to 50%,
Yeah.
and so which equates to 4 million fewer people in the UK. So that is something that our listeners would want to. So I would recommend listening to episode 2 if you haven't already, because that's packed with information about how to retain your donors. Because as we all know, in the sector, it's really a lot harder to acquire donors than to keep them. It's more
Yeah.
expensive, and it's just, as you said, the times right now are uncertain. But just as we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of your time, and thank you for coming on. But if listeners remember just one or two things, and I always like to have strategic homework for my episodes, because this is a guest episode, and with the lovely Chantal, we won't have any homework, so you'll be happy to hear that, listeners, the lovely listeners. But what would you say is one or two key takeaways that people should take away this Purple Day and today,
Okay.
and
So
moving forward?
yeah. So first thing is probably just first aid. So if you don't know epilepsy first aid, like I was saying, there's a simple, really simple. It takes about 90 seconds. We've got a great video on our website at
Amazing.
epilepsy.org.uk. So that care video, all you need to do is care. Head to our website, find out. And the second thing is just remember, just like I think if you think on average we come into contact with around say 12 people a day, maybe it's at work, we're talking to people online like we are now. shopping, gym, whatever, around 12 people a day. And then over the year, that equates to around just around 4,400 people over the year that we come into contact with. Um, 1 in 100 have epilepsy. So you probably met around at least 44 people over that year with epilepsy. And if
Wow.
you think about their loved ones, how many people it affects, you probably met even more. You've met someone who is affected by epilepsy more than
Yes.
once, multiple times. Whether it's whatever you're in at work, uh, on the at the airport, wherever it might be, So the point is, you will meet someone with epilepsy if you haven't already. You will know someone. They can't control what happens, but you can. So you can make that difference, whether it's, like I said, first aid is a thing, or just having a conversation with them, just saying if you know that they've had a rough weekend because they've had a lot of seizures and they've had to miss something, just talk to them about it, because that will break down those feelings of I can't talk about it, no one understands. I think it's just sort of saying, how does it affect you? Is there anything I can do to help? Or just how are you doing? Sometimes it's as simple as that. And I think it's those little actions that make all the big difference, I think. So yeah, just think about all your different networks. The likelihood is that you will probably know someone if you don't already.
Wow.
And you can
Yeah.
play your part.
Yes. And so that's for everyone to know. That's epilepsy.org.uk. It's a brilliant website. They've got all these resources, the helpline and raising awareness and Purple Day today. Just very exciting. Thank you so much, Chantal, for your time. If you missed our last episode, it was all about the spring statement, and you'll want to listen to that because there's three certainties in life. There's death, taxes, and the loophole you need to look through the spring statement that the Chancellor said, because there's a line there that you don't want to miss. And I like some bold titles, and that one is certainly a bold title. But thank you so much, Chantal. And keep shining brightly. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you.